Vital points in demonstration. You can get what you want if you return home. Liberty under law. The parable of the prodigal son is in reality a lesson of man's relationship to God. In it, Jesus is showing that there is a reciprocal action between God's mind and our mind, that He turns to us as we turn to Him, and that the Spirit will help us and give to us whenever we turn to it. God is both love and law. The love of God is the Father's willingness to give us whatever we need. All we can take, and the law of God is the means through which we receive. Jesus first announced this law of cause and effect in a statement that, "Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap." This means that we can have only those things which we take through our beliefs. It is done unto you according to your belief. The act of taking from God is threefold: mental, spiritual, and physical. Before we can reach out and take the blessings with the physical hand, we first must inwardly, mentally, and spiritually be receptive to it, accept it in our thought. We must be receptive to it. Our power of choice enables us to select whatever we want, but ignorance of the law often causes us to choose evil instead of good. So why is this? And why, if we are made in the image and likeness of God, are we able to choose evil as well as good? Because we are individuals and we have the power of self-choice. As in the Garden of Eden, there always are two possibilities open to man, and he can choose that which he pleases. Evil is not a thing of itself, but a wrong relationship to the law. If we believe in both good and evil, then we shall experience some of both. Our world will be a mixture of heaven and hell. But if we believe only in the good, then we shall experience only good. This is the law, and we are all subject to it. We are the offspring of love, but subject to law. To understand this famous story of the prodigal son as told by Jesus, we must study it in the light of modern psychology and metaphysics. We must keep in mind that the real world, according to Jesus, is not the visible world. The real world is the invisible, of which the visible is but the form. Heaven to us may be a dream on earth, but to him earth was a broken and shadowy reflection of heaven. The material was ordained as a sign language of the spiritual. For the invisible things of him, since the creation of the world, are clearly seen, being perceived through the things that are made, even his everlasting power and divinity. Like every other story that Jesus told, the parable of the prodigal son has two sides, the outer side and the inner side. If we view it only from the physical or objective side, as most people do, then we miss the deeper meaning and lessons which Jesus taught. It will pay us, therefore, to study this particular parable in light of its psychological and metaphysical implications, and with a firm intention to let its principle germinate within our own minds. Briefly, psychology is a study of the actions and reactions of thoughts of the individual mind, and metaphysics is a study of the relationship between this individual mind and the universal mind. To the psychologist, for instance, the two sons would represent two distinct personalities, the extrovert and the introvert, while to the metaphysician they would represent two states of consciousness. Jesus' statement that a certain man had two sons would to the psychologist mean that a certain man had two physical boys, one alienating himself by his sins of passion, and the other alienating himself by his sins of temper. The one eats the husks of fleshiness, the other eats the food of a sour spirit. To the metaphysician, on the other hand, the two sons would mean that, as a son of God, every man has the right of self-choice. He has the possibility of experiencing both good and evil. The important thing in Jesus' parables always is the inner teaching, and we should not, as Chrysostom warned, be over-busy about the rest. That is, we should not be too much concerned with the details of the story, lest we lose its heart. Our delight in the parables, says Wernell, rises regularly in an exact degree in which we succeed in liberating ourselves from the interpretation of the evangelist and yielding ourselves up to the original force of the parables themselves. If we read the story metaphysically, that is, spiritually, then keep in mind Jesus' statement that God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Then we shall find that there is one main theme setting forth the reciprocal action between the universal and the individual mind, and several auxiliary themes showing how we can keep in touch with God and draw from him whatever we need. The purpose of the parable is eightfold: to arouse the mind, to awaken the inner power, to bring out the possible man, to deepen the faith, to expand the consciousness, to quicken the will, to intensify the realization of good, and to make the principles of the parable operative in our lives. The prodigal son probably is the best known of all the lesser characters in the New Testament. He has been preached about, preached to, and preached at more than any one character in the Bible. He has been denounced for his sins and mistakes, and execrated for his self-assertion and self-will, condemned for his moral and spiritual bankruptcy, his apostasy of conduct and spendthrift folly. Yet, as George Murray said, it is the most divinely tender and humanly touching story ever told on our earth. The story has a message for every one of us, regardless of our position or station in life, and regardless of how far we may have advanced in truth. It is a story of every man in his journey from sense to soul. According to the old Hebrew priests, there were 3,242 things a man had to do in order to be spiritual. According to this parable, there is only one: to return to God, to harmonize our minds with His mind, and to surrender our wills to His will. And how shall we do this? By bringing ourselves back into line with God's law of good. There is a spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty giveth him understanding. The Spirit is with us always, but to step down the good, or bring it into visibility, God needs our single vision and our undivided allegiance to work through. Religion is not a lot of churches, choirs, schools, denominations, creeds, rites, forms, clergy, restrictions, prohibitions, nor fine-spun theories. It is a way of life, individualized, personalized, and practiced by human beings according to their understanding of spiritual law, the law of good. God is the law of good, the answer to every problem and the fulfillment of every need, and man can put this law into perfect action in his life. He can do it by keeping himself in line with the law so that it works in his affairs. This is the truth Jesus announced when he said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Free from what? Free from inharmony, worry, fear, frustration, sickness, problems, difficulties, and limitation of every sort. The law exists potentially in the nature of every man, and can be brought into perfect fulfillment through the recognition that he is the Son, the center of manifestation, where all God's blessings are poured out into abundant measure. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Now pause for a moment until you get the full realization of what that means. As God's Son, you do not have to get any special favors, divine decrees, nor heavenly dispensations to claim what is innately yours. You merely have to recognize who you are, God's Son, establish yourself in His law of good, and press your claim. Does that sound difficult? Then it is no more so than when the King of England exercises his power as sovereign of the British Empire. The power vested in a king can be effective only when it is recognized and expressed. But you are a king too, with an inheritance so rich that the human mind cannot even fathom it. Then why do you have such a hard time getting along, keeping your head in affairs above water, and keeping the proverbial wolves from your door? Because you beg instead of claim that which is already yours. Didn't it ever occur to you that little blessings are harder to get than big ones? Not because of God's unwillingness, nor any limit of His power, but by reason of His fabulous wealth. If you turn your faucet on full force and hold a teaspoon under it, you will come away with an empty spoon. Why? Because of too much water. The pressure of the water splashes the contents out because the spoon is too small. And so it is with our poor little prayers and feeble claims upon God's abundance. Jesus said, "I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. These things have I spoken, that your joy may be made full. All things whatsoever the Father hath are mine, or thine. My peace I give unto you." Now ask yourself, is my joy full? Do I have peace? Do I have the same certitude of limitless living that Jesus had? Am I free from fear, worry, mental distress, tension, inhibitions, and trouble? Well, you can be. With God, all things are possible. Do you believe this? Do you believe that there is a power within you that is greater than any problem in your world? Do you believe that the Son of God hath power on earth to forgive sins and correct the mistakes of the human mind in its sinking? It makes no difference to what church you belong, how many times you make your communion, give of your substance, say your prayers, nor what name you use to designate the mighty presence of God, if you do not believe in this law of unlimited good and personalize it or set it to working in your own consciousness. then you cannot hope to share in God's blessing nor receive answers to your prayer. The scientific way to establish yourself in God's law of good is not by talking about what you hope He will do for you, but to act as though it had already been done, to invite His blessing into your consciousness. You are not only to think of God as the only presence and power in your life, but you must cooperate with Him in every thought, word, belief, and deed. Thus you set the law of good in operation in your life. You harmonize your mind so completely with His mind that doubt, evil, and adverse appearances can no longer prevail against it. Your own consciousness, of course, must be the proving ground for every truth you wish to build into your life. There are many scriptural statements for accomplishing this, but we know of none more effective than the first line in the 23rd Psalm. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Or the master affirmation, "There is no limitation, for thou art the supreme and sole reality of being, and thou art the glorious fulfillment of every desire." Perhaps the greatest stumbling block to those who set out to establish themselves on the affirmative side of good is the complete change that is required of them in their attitude toward life. We do not make ourselves centers of the highest manifestation by sending out thoughts and holding feelings that call out the worst in others and from the universe in general, but by radiating the positive elements of love, confidence, harmony, and peace, which call out the best. As we use the good we have, we attract more power as we generate the power we have, more peace as we express the peace we have, more courage, more faith, more happiness, more life, more truth, more substance, more health. Like begets like attracts like. The more of every good thing we express, the more it shall increase in our lives. It is imperative, therefore, that we take an inventory of our attitude at the earliest possible moment, and that we set about stamping out all attitudes which are inimical to our good. In our return home, we are asking God to speed us on our way. We are tired of the husks and the pig pens of the world, and we want to get home without delay. The desire is all well and good, but we ought to remind ourselves that the process will be accelerated only in proportion as we show our ability to jettison the things which took us away. We all glory in the one power of God, but we need to remind ourselves many times that there are two ways of using it, as illustrated by Jesus in His cursing of the fig tree. In this instance, He used the identical power to destroy that He used to heal. He used it in the same way that man used electricity. The power employed to electrocute a criminal is the same power that we use to make our toast. We are dealing with law, and the law relates itself to us as we relate ourselves to it. If electricity burns up our house, it is not electricity that was at fault, but our relation to it. If we deliberately or in ignorance live outside the law of good, then we live contrary to our best interest. Have we then broken the law? No, we have broken ourselves on the law. Probably one of the greatest difficulties in human life today is that too many of us try to change the other fella. We will learn that there never is any problem, provocation, or situation in life which necessitates our changing someone else. We do not need to try to change others, but only in ourselves. The other fellow changes as we change our thought about him. Our blessings increase by appreciation of what we possess. Gratitude keeps our good in circulation. Prayers that depend upon principle will be answered. Those that depend upon persons, places, and things will not be answered. Let us return then to the subject of our attitude and see what we should be done about them. In the third paragraph of this chapter, we stated that the power of choice enables us to select whatever we want. We can decide whether we shall be good or bad, true or false, pleasant or mean, happy or sad, positive or negative. Attitudes are creative, and they not only affect our own lives, but the lives of those around us. They determine the direction in which we move, up or down, backward or forward. It is a salutary thing at the beginning of a study of this kind, therefore, to discover our basic attitude, and to cancel those which are failing to bring out the best in ourselves and others. The supreme test of every truth student is not how much he knows of metaphysics and philosophy, but how much truth he puts to work in his life. Most of us are like the man spoken of in the 12th chapter of Proverbs. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in the hunting, but the precious substance of man is the diligent. The thrill of the hunt ends with the kill. The preparation and roasting of the game must be left to others. We are more interested in hunting than in what we catch, and this is one of our greatest weaknesses. We love to read books, listen to sermons and lectures, but we do so little about what we learn. The slothful man roasts not that which he took in the hunting, but the precious substance of man is to the diligent. The antidote for sloth, then, is diligence, and diligence is defined as an assiduous and constant application. Indeed, it is the determining factor in every successful achievement. Prodigals do not always follow the pattern outlined in our story, riotous indolence ending in pig pens. Prodigality is anything that keeps us from being at our best, doing our best, and having the best. It stems from our attitudes and from our failure to develop and use what we have for the advancement of ourselves and others. The lazy or slothful person is just as much a prodigal as the drunkard or gambler. He who allows his body to become soft and flabby through indifference and love of ease is as much a prodigal as a man who lives in vice and lust. The person who neglects his mind is as much a prodigal as the one who uses it for his own destruction. In the mind of Jesus there seemed but little difference between sins of the body and sins of the mind. In fact, he spent more time execrating the uncharitableness and selfishness of the Pharisees than he did in denouncing those sins so often associated with the prodigal son. Let us take inventory of our attitudes, then, to see if we are applying truth to the fullest extent in our everyday lives. Let us be absolutely honest in answering the questions that follow. Otherwise, we shall learn little from them. The purpose of the test here given is, of course, to discover and then eliminate all the prodigal elements in our minds and to make our consciousness true and sound to the center. The process is similar to stage effects where, by the use of light, certain things are blacked out and other things brought forward. Some of the questions in the test have to do with our personal lives and affairs, and others with the lives and affairs of those around us. But all are pertinent and important in the realization of our final goal, which is to establish ourselves firmly in God's law of good. We should therefore go over the list every day until we have eliminated everything in our character and our consciousness unlike God and inimical in our good. We should also remember that what comes into our lives is of the exact nature of some thought, idea, belief, or feeling which is lurking somewhere in the inner mind. It is not enough to repeat the affirmation, "Nothing but good can come into my life," unless we consciously set about to eliminate every attitude, thought, belief, and feeling which keeps it out. In other words, we must keep the good pouring in by letting the evil out. The attitude test. 1. Am I willing to change conditions by first changing myself? 2. Do I observe all the rules of health and right thinking? 3. Am I at peace with the whole world? 4. Do I accept the responsibility for everything that goes wrong in my life? 5. Do I show goodwill toward everyone who crosses my path? 6. Am I short or cross with people? 7. Do I always, under all circumstances, try to see and magnify the good in people? 8. Am I easily upset or annoyed by what others say or do? 9. Do I get moody and depressed when things go wrong? 10. Do I become petulant and irritable when I cannot have my way? 11. Am I easily discouraged when my plans are thwarted or answers are long delayed? 12. Do I secretly cherish grudges and ill feelings towards others? 13. Do I judge according to appearances? Am I quick to pass judgment on others? 14. Are my feelings easily hurt, and do I quickly take offense? 15. Do I have a mind for trouble, misfortune, or symptoms? 16. Do I listen to gossip and syndicate what I hear? 17. Is my tone of voice always cheerful, friendly, and helpful? 18. Do I always strive to give my best and be my best under all circumstance? 19. Do I share wholeheartedly and generously with others? 20. Am I patient, tolerant, kind, and loving? 21. Am I diligent in the application of truth to all problems in my life? 22. When in trouble, do I always turn first to God? 23. Do I respond negatively or positively to criticism? 24. Do I resent, argue, nag, criticize, or condemn? 25. Do I try to impose my personal will on others? 26. Am I suspicious, jealous, antagonistic, or resistant? 27. Am I easily confused, frightened, or worried? 28. Am I short-tempered, sensitive, covetous, or grasping? 29. Is my mind always receptive to God and free from falsity, taint, and other clutter? 30. Do I hold steadfastly to truth in the face of seeming disaster? 31. Do I love the good in others and ignore the bad? 32. Do I forgive everybody and everything at all times? 33. Do I keep my vision one-pointed and clear? Keep answering and checking yourself by these questions each day until you have weeded out all the prodigal elements in your character.